I want to share with you the hardest thing I ever had to learn, and that was quantum mechanics, specifically the Schrodinger's equation. So here's the general equation, and you might be thinking, hey, that doesn't look too bad. Even though I don't understand some of those symbols, it doesn't look too bad, but you'll be wrong. It's absolutely horrendous. And so quantum mechanics deals with subatomic particles and their behavior. Now, the Schrodinger equation, when I did it, dealt with electrons. And electrons are the worst thing ever, as I learned. And so what made this really difficult was not the equations, and as you can tell, there's all these different equations. I could use memory techniques to memorize the equations. Yes, the equations are a little bit more complex, but it can be done with memory techniques. What made this very difficult is that what do these equations represent? What do these different variables to the equation, the different parts of it? But more importantly, how can I actually represent this information that I have? For example, all of this, how can I represent that in some sort of visual form? And that's the thing, you can't really do it because you can't see subatomic particles. There's no way to do it. And so you have to do your best interpretation of making an illustration to kind of represent it, even though it comes nowhere close. And that's what made it so hard for me, that these equations, I'm like, man, I wish I know how this actually looks in real life. Now, when I studied classical physics, it was so easy to do that because, a car going, a car stopping, car going up an inclined plane, that stuff could be visualized, but this couldn't. And that's what made it so difficult for me, because I'm like, okay, I have this information for the problem. Okay, what does what represent in the equation? How is this one different from the last problem I did? And so all these different things came into it, and if you didn't understand the basic principles, the equation is pretty much useless to you, and there's no way for you to actually solve the problem. And so many students had problems with quantum mechanics because it's just something that's so complex, and it's not really, it's not, you can't really grasp it easily just by reading a book like, oh, it makes sense. It's something that you really have to work on, and I have so much respect for people who actually understand all this math. Because at one time, someone just made all this stuff up. It was like, hey, this is quantum mechanics. These are the equations that work to it. But yeah, this was the hardest thing I ever had to learn. And as you can tell, there's a lot of equations. And if you hate math, you would really hate this. And so I just wanted to share with you the hardest thing I ever had to learn, show you and explain why it was so hard for me to actually learn information. Because everyone has their own material that they find really difficult. And so yeah, so let me know down below what the hardest thing you had to learn was. Because I like to see, what people struggle with, because that's the way we can actually help each other, right? So if someone's trying to learn something, but they're like, man, this is so hard to learn, but you're really good at it, you're able to help them. And the only way you can actually help people is by them letting you know, hey, I'm struggling with this type of information. I can't really remember it. It's really hard to grasp. That's where you can actually help people. So let me know down below what you have trouble learning with, what the hardest thing you ever had to learn was. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.